Welcome to the Customer Success from the Ground Up podcast with me, Mike Marshall, Customer Success Leader.
And me, Deborah Knight, founder of CS Consultancy Captive.
Each episode, we interview people that have set up customer success from the ground up at their companies.
And we try and have a lot of fun in the process.
We hope you enjoy the next episode. Hello, Deborah and Tom. How are you doing?
Good morning, Mike. How's it going?
Very good. I'm very excited to be hosting another awesome episode of our Customer Success from the Ground Up podcast with me, Mike Marshall, Customer Success Leader, and my co-host, Deborah.
Deborah Knight. Hi, everyone. Consultant and coach for customer success teams.
And we have an awesome guest today, Tom from TJM Digital, a HubSpot consultant. I know that HubSpot is pretty huge in the kind of medium to large enterprise environment for customer success. For CRM. So I think a lot of our listeners will either be using it or would have used it at some point. So really excited to hear from Tom and all things sort of CRM, CS, sales, and how everything interacts, and people can get the best out of HubSpot, I think, in a lot of ways. So we'll jump into that in a minute. I'll let Tom introduce himself in a moment, but before we jump into that, as always, we have our exciting section at the start of That Escalated Fast, where me and Deborah trawl a Reddit forum about customer success, find an interesting story, and ask, or give our opinions on it. And we'll ask Tom his, if that's okay. So let's get into
Thanks for having me on, guys, by the way. Much
thanks for joining us.
Lovely to have you on, Tom. Cool. So today, they always have funny handles on Reddit. So this is from Puzzle-Headed List 873. So thank you, Puzzle-Headed List 873. So this is: managing tasks in Slack is destroying my sanity when every client demands their own shared channel. So this is the ability for customers to use Slack to message you and instant message you, I think, is the important point. So Puzzle-Headed List 873 says, I swear I'm losing my mind trying to keep track of deliverables this quarter because every single client we onboard demands a shared channel for real-time communication. That is frustrating. It starts out great since they feel super supported, but then devolves into them dropping feature requests all the time and urgent bug reports at random hours of the day. I try to log everything into our database, but there's always a gap where I miss a message in a thread that got buried by 20 other messages, which is easy to do in Slack. The context switching is destroying my productivity. You read a message and you have to open another tab, etc. I feel like my actual job has become data entry between chat and our project boards. Does anyone have a workflow that actually keeps client requests from slipping through the cracks when your entire day just bouncing between 30 different active conversations? So I've never had customers on my Slack or my Teams when I was a CSM, probably for this reason. But obviously sometimes, you give out WhatsApps to your customers if they're quite close. And obviously I think that demands expects a certain level of instant response. So Deborah, first of all, I'd love to get your thoughts on that. Then I'll hand over to Tom.
Yeah, so this really spoke to me this week because I've literally been on both sides of the coin where I'm working in a business at the moment where we have teams, and clients also work with teams, and then they just message you and randomly call you or out of the blue. And it took me a while to get used to it. I was like, oh my gosh, I can actually message a client from my Teams chat. This doesn't feel that safe. And I just suddenly got a phone call out of the blue one day, and the client was like, oh, I saw you were online, I thought I'd give you a call. I was like, I don't feel like this is a good thing. But then on the other hand, I'm bringing on a new partnership and I'm the client, and I'm like, oh, can we have a Teams chat on this so that I can check on the onboarding of it and stuff. And I think that, there's a real challenge of getting your comms. You work really hard to get your email comms and things like that, your tickets into your CRM, which I'm sure we'll chat with Tom about later, but having trackability of your emails and everything in your HubSpot environment. And then suddenly you've got a whole load of other communication with your client that maybe is only visible to you on a one-on-one channel, or maybe it's in a group channel, but not everybody's in that channel. And I don't think it's just Teams and Slack, lots of, like you said, Mike, lots of people are working in WhatsApp now. And I think it does present a real challenge. And I think like trying to figure out how to solve that is becoming increasingly important.
I think you're absolutely right. I think just having all these channels to kind of like communicate with is a bit confusing. Like, well, I have Teams, I have Slack, I have email, I have WhatsApp, so it can get a
And
bit
there is
much.
such a thing as over communication as well, right? Like sometimes like if it's fast communication, it means it's perhaps less quality. And I
Yeah.
think there's a really funny comment which is in that channel that you read out, Mike, about someone having a bit of a rant about, clients giving you rubbish feedback. We won't read it out because they were really
I
having
really want to. Yeah. Anyway, I won't. It's really good.
You won't read it out. If
We know where to
anybody's
look.
intrigued, go and
Uh,
find that thread.
Well, you know
Um,
what? I'm going to. It says
okay, go for it.
Volcano Jones says it's terrible. At least with sending an email, there's enough friction to stop them from sending their most inane, poorly contrived crackpot ideas and rantings. I'll leave it at that. But Tom, I would love to hear your thoughts on that. All those sort of multiple levels of communication, like what's best with customers.
Yeah, for sure. I think with Slack, I use Slack for almost all kind of communication these days. I think if there's emails or more kind of things that can get lost in threads, I find it. I think the trade-off, as you say, is between kind of having something in email which is a bit more kind of thought through and whatnot, whereas Slack is much more of a stream of consciousness, which can sometimes need to be deciphered. But I just kind of I find that Slack, I work better with it with my clients for sure. But where it gets quite powerful, I think, is by using canvases. So you can have a channel with someone, which is, you can obviously have threads, you can have long streams of stuff which can get lost. But I think if you can kind of open up a shared canvas on that channel, which you can almost kind of, you don't want to duplicate your own kind of project management and other systems. But if there's a canvas which you can agree on with your client that this is where stuff goes that needs to be looked at, you almost like create a kind of item for each thing. Use the chat more for kind of, oh, is anyone available to help me with this, or the slightly more kind of inane stuff. But if you can, I think it's always about agreed levels of communication, agreed levels of what's appropriate. And I think canvases give you a bit more of a defined way of operating. I've started using that with, as I say, with a number of my clients, and I found it works really well. Very easy to create a canvas. I think it's one of the most underutilized parts of Slack.
I'd never even heard of it. So,
yeah, I mean, essentially, so in a Slack channel, you can click the Add Canvas button at the top. I think it's a universal tool. I don't think you need a paid plan or anything, but you can add a canvas, and it basically gives you you can add multiple canvases. So it's almost just like a live document, which you can set up with as a table, as a checklist, as give people access to add things. Prevent other people from being able to add things, just let them comment, that kind of thing. So it stays as part of your channel, part of your chat, but it's a bit more structured.
I think
Right.
what's really telling about that is that you are accepting that as a channel of communication, and you are then formalizing that channel of communication rather than trying to say don't use it or it doesn't work, like forcing it into somewhere else. The way clients want to communicate with us and how we want to communicate with them is changing and evolving.
Absolutely.
And it's about recognizing that and trying to introduce some of the structure around that. So another thing that I saw in the same thread or chat was somebody had said, like, they've got a custom emoji, which if they see that request come through from the client, they use that custom emoji and it automatically creates a ticket. And I've seen that as well in different things. There's like forms and tickets that you can use, and I think it's about the businesses and the operations acknowledging and going, right, okay, actually, this is how clients are working with us. So what are we going to do about it?
Absolutely. I think I think that's exactly it. It's kind of understanding where people reside and how they work now, and then I wouldn't even want to call it a compromise really, but kind of just meeting in that kind of, right, okay, that's fine, but to make this not become a Wild West kind of world of streams of consciousness and random requests that get lost. Chat here, requests there. In terms of you touched upon how to kind of handle all these different kind of communication channels as well, and I think I'm finding that the Claude Opus 4.3 is basically I've now set up where I kind of have like a live like a Notion rolling document for every client I work with. I never even have to look at this rolling document, but essentially every day Claude is connected to the Slack channels that I work in and the chats that I have with those people. It's also connected to my inbox, and I just tell which channels are important, which email addresses are important with regard to this channel, and then any kind of meeting transcripts kind of get pulled in as well. And at the end of every day, I just instruct Claude to do a sweep, and it kind of goes through all the channels, all the transcripts, and then updates the rolling document for just full ongoing context. And then it could just always refer to that, because Claude's own projects it has good long-term memory and context and stuff. But I think that Notion board for that client can kind of store it all in a kind of human readable way as well. It breaks it into structured clients. It's taken a bit of trial and error to get it into a good place, but that's how I tend to kind of, I guess, stay on top of the different channels that people use, whether it's Slack, email, Teams, funneling through this kind of one place to which then, analyzes it, generates it can feedback on the kind of problem, not the problem clients, but it can tell you who you could ask it to score individuals on the quality of the hypothesizing, but it's all data, and it's all going to be in there for you to use in using AI.
That's clever. Well, fair dues. I like that.
I've written that down as a thing I'm going to go and look at this afternoon to do.
Good man. Yeah, I like that. Cool. Well, I think we should jump into the interview section of this customer success from the podcast. So, I'll hand over to Deborah, and she'll be nice with you at the start. Tom, I know you guys are old colleagues, and then ask some more sort of professional questions about all your experiences and things. So, Deborah, I'll hand over to you to go through the.
Well, thanks. So, Tom, do you want to just kind of introduce yourself and a couple of elevator pitch about yourself and your backgrounds?
Sure. So,
We'll
professionally
afterwards, by the way, just to let you know, I'm going to give you a score out of 10.
Understood. Right. Okay. I better make it interesting then. So yeah, former musician actually, but then fell back into the kind of world of work in 2008ish. Since then, worked in the public sector in kind of digital environments, so website development, CRM for universities and councils and colleges and things, and then joined the SaaS startup world in 2017. Inherited a signed HubSpot contract, which I then kind of took on, integrated with Salesforce and Gainsight from a sales and a CS perspective, and within a year or so was basically a HubSpot fanboy. I much prefer it to the tool I used to use, which was mentioned just now, I've worked with mainly tech startups, tech growing or tech kind of small SMEs, but certainly over the last few years, as I've kind of developed into a consultant, I've worked with a huge range of companies, primarily with HubSpot, everything from kind of standard kind of tech pipelines, leads, sales, success, but also people who use HubSpot for example, matching surrogates to potential parents and using pipelines and combining them to do that kind of thing as well. So yeah, I love solving problems. But going into messy CRMs, fixing them, but also starting from scratch. Like a blank canvas is also quite a nice treat every now and again as well.
I'm sure there's no shortage of messy CRMs to go and help to fix.
Yeah, I mean,
or is it just me that ends up in those companies?
No. It's so common, and I think certainly over the last, I think HubSpot's marketing has led a lot of people to think they need it, or word of mouth suggests, you need to get HubSpot, and people will get it, and they'll kind of build it based on the kind of out of the box setup. They'll kind of have an integration partner or who will kind of get it working for them, perhaps as HubSpot intends. But the real power of it is when you kind of build it to match your systems and your setups and your the exact way your business works, rather than trying to shoehorn the way you do things into the kind of out of the box HubSpot setup. So often I think that's where it gets interesting, is when you can kind of go in and see how someone's doing something and struggling with it and probably almost ready to kind of tear up their contract because it's not doing what they want to do, and then you show them actually, how do you work? right, okay, that's not going to support that. Let's adapt this, build an object to represent that, associate this with that, make sure the handover from there to there works, and take it from there, really.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Well, we'll get into more of that in a minute. But before we do, I'll give you a score of, well, let's give you a 9.5 out of 10 because, I don't want to be too
No one's
generous.
perfect. No one's
I'll say,
perfect.
yeah, it can never be. I mean, it sounds fake if you just say 10, doesn't it? So
Yeah, you
yeah,
can have room to grow, Tom. Yeah.
But before we do that, I just want to get to know you outside of work a little bit. So we've got a nice little icebreaker for you. And today, my inspiration has come from my daughter, who turned 7 this week. She's got a break the rules day at school. She's gone in with crazy hair, taken juice in her instead of her water, different things that you can do. What rule would you break today if you could?
oh gosh, that's a really good question. The rule I would break today is, God, you've got me there. I'd love to say, well, I'm heading up to London this afternoon for a working lunch, working afternoon. So I think the rule there is going to be, no, that's terrible. I don't know.
You can have juice as well instead of water today.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
Type of juice.
I think I probably, God, obviously I'm too good. I never break rules, so I can't think of of a rule to break. This might be where you need to edit.
I think you should spray a purple Mohican on your head. That would look
Yeah,
good.
that would be good. That would be good. No, I think the rule I break, when I take my daughter to school, yeah, it'd be about her breaking the rule, like you say. I like that. I'd let her go in like kind of totally looking, inappropriate in terms of hair and
a
and
bit crazy, yeah.
some crazy makeup, some maybe like a massive nose ring, and just
chocolates for lunch.
Like, yeah, exactly, and loads of peanuts to really freak out the other the school.
Just have like just peanuts all over the place because
and was just like wear peanuts.
It's about safety, everybody here.
If anyone who's not a parent is listening,
you've got a rule, Mike.
Anti-peanuts. So
no, exactly. So I've probably cut off part of my client base there who who actually respect health and safety rules and have children who are allergic to peanuts. So I apologise, but yeah.
I thought you handled that very well. I think Deborah threw you a bit of a curveball
there. Sorry.
Tell me something you do that's illegal. So that's where my mind was going. But anyway, yeah. Cool.
Great. Okay. Well, so the reason why I'm really excited to kind of have this interview with you, Tom, is because I have worked in quite a few different sort of early stage scaling up businesses. And I don't think it's ever been that straightforward to go into one of these sort of earlier stage businesses and look at their setup from a CS perspective. I've always kind of found that we go, right, well, here's the CRM, here's the customer record. And actually what you're kind of working with is maybe a deal or an opportunity that's a contract, not a customer. And you're working with the closed won date, not the renewal date. And it's all kind of you're working as a CS function in a sales built environment. And I just wanted to kind of understand from your perspective, is that something common that you see and how do you tackle that?
Yeah, I think it's super common. I think often when I'm working with a company who needs their CRM audited in any way, one of the first questions I ask is, can we define 100% clearly which companies are customers? And it's quite scary how often the answer is no. Like the CRM is not set up in a way that we know we can say that all of these people were once customers, and some of them may still be, some of them might not be, but yeah, as you say, there's no way of the structure is often not designed at an early stage to support not just who becomes a customer, but what happens after they become a customer, and whether that is being maintained within the CRM that sales and marketing work in, or whether it's being maintained elsewhere. There's so frequently a disconnect between what's happened to that customer the additional products they may have bought since they became a customer, the extensions they've signed, everything like that, to then tie back to your live kind of prospect pool, I guess. So I always tend to work backwards from defining customers in a CRM, almost in a kind of cascading derivative list style. So often lifecycle stages are set by workflows, like they filled out a form, make them an MQL, they booked a meeting, set them as an SQL, etc., stuff like that. And then when a contract when a deal is set as closed won, set them as a customer. And a lot of that is done, is the default, certainly in HubSpot, is the default kind of methodology that's in place in terms of how lifecycle stages work there. For me, I tend to work with derivative lists to set live lifecycle. So there's often a case for kind of having a lifecycle stage that represents the furthest someone has ever got, and it kind of stays like that. Like if they're an opportunity, but they kind of, it's a closed loss before they get to becoming a customer, they'll kind of stay at that opportunity stage because that's what they've got to. But in terms of having a live pool of where everyone sits, I'd always create a secondary live lifecycle stage property, and that will always be based off lists live segment membership, which is based on corresponding objects. So a customer, the highest level list you've got, customer, is anybody associated with a live CS deal. So you might have a pipeline either within HubSpot, or other CRMs are available, or within the other tool that you're using to maintain that customer journey. But there needs to be that kind of live data point or object, date related, i.e. it's open, to say this is a current customer based on an agreement that we have with them. Working backwards, you then have a live segment of opportunities. So this is everybody who is not a member of customer. You always kind of filter out the one above. They're not a member of customer, but they have a live open opportunity in the sales pipeline. And then you'd work backwards from that to, for example, SQL. And these are people who are not in any of the top two lists, but they have a meeting booked. A meeting exists in the future with a sales with a sales rep, or categorized as a sales meeting, for example. So that way you've always got, and obviously there's nuance when it comes to customers who are upselling. I think you'd then be kind of cross-reference in terms of life cycle stage. They're still a customer, but you'd be cross-referencing with upsell pipeline or anything like that. But in terms of just who is a customer versus who is a prospect, who is in pipeline, I think derivative lists based on actual objects with dates in play are what are needed in order to say specifically who is a customer, who is an opportunity, etc. And then you set up reports or alerts for exceptions, i.e. they've got a deal, an open sales deal, but the close date is in the past. Flag that on a hygiene dashboard, or flag that in a Slack alert, that kind of thing, to kind of keep things honest.
And I think it sounds quite simple, doesn't it, to know who your customers are, who are past customers, who are current customers, who are prospect customers. But then actually, when you've gone into the detail of how you look at that, it actually suddenly gets quite complicated as well. How do you, like, if you were talking to somebody like a early stage founder, or a head of CS, how would you say, like, stop and do this thing first? Like, don't even look at your CRM, your HubSpot. What would you do away from the system to get everybody thinking in that way that you've just talked about?
So yeah, I mean, certainly in software or kind of classic SaaS side of things, then there's likely a platform or a product in play, and you've kind of got records of who's using your tool there. And if that's not the case, then maybe you have a spreadsheet, or maybe you have another way that you're defining who is an actual customer right now.
Okay.
Yeah, if you haven't, then there's a bit of a problem, really. And that is where, that's the starting point. You just need a record of who's who, who's using the platform.
Relationship with your product into your CRM is actually quite critical, would you say?
In many cases, yeah. I mean, again, it depends on the type of tool it is, but I think if you've got it's often a kind of, do you trust what's happening in the product, or do you trust open contract? Yeah, like kind of open renewal. Open deals representing current customers with a renewal date in the future. But certainly, I don't think you get more of a kind of definitive definition of a customer than who has an active kind of account in your product and who is using
Yeah.
your product. And again, you touched upon kind of that connection into the CRM as well, and we've worked on that before previously, where we want to be able to, by kind of having that connection to the product, you can have live data in your CRM of usage, lapsing. You can highlight who's at risk before you might kind of get word otherwise based on like logins, functionality use, etc. So that's all information that is vitally important, and the system that you use and the structure you use ideally needs to support that, certainly in those kind of software cases.
Yeah. Okay, great. And you were talking earlier a little bit about how easy actually it can be to build things in certain CRMs. We're talking specifically about HubSpot because that's the one you know best, but also sometimes it can be too easy, right? So we'll just do a fix for that, or a hack around that. Like what mistakes do you see people doing when they do those kind of quick fixes, and what's the longer term impact?
Yeah, I mean, quick fixes are easy to do and solve problems there and then, but like you say, without scoping and looking at the potential impact of said quick easy fix, it can be a butterfly here causing a tidal wave there, and I've been involved in plenty of those. And there's nothing worse than a quick fix suddenly unleashing a kind of 10,000 Slack messages into a channel that have abort. There's no hiding. But yeah, it's so yeah. Quick fixes should be treated as just that, really. And I think it's often like the kind of access that you provide to people in the CRM, certainly, and also the kind of software that's integrated with it. I think the biggest issue I see is generally dupes. It's very easy to kind of have a company defined as a customer by its domain, and then it's got another domain that people use for emailing, perhaps, and someone comes in from that. If your CRM is set up to auto create companies based on a domain, then suddenly you've got a new prospect as far as the CRM is concerned. So you end up with a kind of if you've got settings that are going to be doing this kind of thing, you need to be aware of the trade-off that the ease of data flowing in can very easily create a mess if you're not on top of it, and maintaining really strong kind of guardrails when it comes to the creation of dupes, the creation of new versions of individuals, new versions of companies, which are essentially the same entity and should just be treated as such in terms of CRM objects. So certainly that's the case. And then I think the other thing to touch on there, and I mentioned it earlier, is making properties and stages and statuses as derivative as possible. So rather than people manually updating things to say like, oh yes, I know that this is this person's opportunity, let's update it, or this is this person is engaged, let's update that, to kind of have rules in place to define exactly what everything means, and where possible, as I say, I cannot recommend enough the kind of live segment, live list approach to kind of changing statuses based on membership of a cascading group of objects based on the things that they have done, the objects they're associated with, the time something happened. If you set that up effectively, it can be a lift at the beginning, but if you set that up effectively, a lot of the CRM can run itself, and you can rely on it a lot more, because you're never kind of classifying something as something based on what someone's clicked or selected. You're basing it on what is happening, what's been created, meeting wise, deal wise, engagement wise, etc.
Yeah. And you touched on another, a few things there, and a lot of this sounds quite straightforward, doesn't it? It's like we just said a minute ago about you should know who your customers are. It should be easy to just go, well, get rid of dupes, and actually, it can be a real head scratcher. And I think something that you worked on with me when we worked together was the parent-child relationships as well, and those things are straightforward until you start to really think about it playing out across the life cycle as well.
Yeah.
And then it can become quite complex. And if you think about things like, okay, where does an upsell fit into this relationship and those sorts of things.
Do you,
Um,
do you have to do like like when you to Deborah's earlier point about what you do outside of the system? Is there like an architecture process you go through when you're brought in to work with a new customer for HubSpot, whereby you kind of like plan out the different ways that you're going to set up the system? You mentioned there was customers or parent-child relationships or like contract objects, or do you kind of do you have like a set way of doing that, and then customers will sort of like ask you to custom change depending on their product or how it integrates with the CRM HubSpot? Like, is that something you do out of interest?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's a standard structure, almost like a kind of boilerplate, which I've just seen work across sectors, across company types, sizes, etc. When it comes to funnel, definition of ICP, definition of customer, etc. And I think it's we mentioned earlier about how often you want to kind of you want to say who are your customers, who are your live list of customers, and work backwards from that. But then more at the beginning of the funnel, it's like, right, who is your ICP, and do you have the data that's set up to kind of support that? Can I run a list? Can I almost? It's almost like, can I create a Boolean yes or no field for ICP based on, again, derivative data? So industry equals one of XXX, region, country equals XXX, and size equals XXX. That's often the kind of that's often in terms of a company ICP. That's often all you need, like the industry, where they operate, and how big or small they are. So often it'll be like, right, is your data structure set up to support this? Are you using HubSpot's default industry field, which has a list of about 10 million industries to stay on top of, or have you created a custom one that can be fed by that, but also it can be fed by other types of enrichment or kind of custom custom processes that support the breakdown of industries as you which suits your kind of ICP breakdown. Do you have kind of when it comes to size, have you created kind of tiers in terms of like small, medium, large enterprise based on number of employees, or is it based on number of sites, or is it based on income, revenue, and essentially, again, it sounds very simple, but so few CRMs are set up to immediately, like I say, can you say that they're a customer, yes or no? Can you say if a company is ICP, yes or no? And those kind of two, because otherwise you just end up with stuff in your CRM that's speculative. They might be worth going after, or they might not, as opposed to actually, no, the data says that this is a prospect. We know that they're ICP, they're not a customer, they're not in pipeline, therefore we want to spend marketing budget on them, we want to give them to sales if they get warmed up, etc. And so much of it is just about having the data structure set up in a way that supports these very simple, in theory, definitions.
And I think like often the case is I'm not a RevOps person. You've got that that background and that strength, and I'm coming at it as I just want my team to do this. I want them to just do this workflow, and I just want them to onboard the client quickly and automate some of the work. And then there's kind of a reverse a little bit first, isn't there? Of before we can build these workflows, we kind of have to get this structure right.
There is, but again, it's kind of, if you work backwards, again, you have a kind of like business as usual customer, and then before that you've got an onboarding customer, and a lot of it is about the handoff between sales to onboarding to CS, etc. And if you set your pipelines up properly, where you've kind of got a close one deal immediately drops into the CS or the onboarding pipeline ready for pickup, and it's assigned based on routing rules or anything else. And then also providing that kind of data, maybe a heads up, like for CS to be aware of anybody who's in this quite far down the funnel stage. They're kind of approaching contract signing. The products they've highlighted are these. The onboarding's going to involve that, and all of that. And if your CRM is set up to kind of be collecting all that data as you go, so sales rep can't move it from stage X to stage Y unless they've defined this kind of data that's necessary for these data points and these requirements for that stage, and that can then be fed through further down the journey into the onboarding and the CS side of things as well. Then you end up with a much tidier handoff, better preparation of what's coming, etc. So, and I don't HubSpot out the box doesn't necessarily support that, but with a smart build and a bit of thought give into how exactly how your business works, how handoffs work, what needs to be known when, there's nothing stopping you from building that kind of infrastructure.
So can you tell us something that you're like, that's cool that I've done that? Like I've tried something new here, or I've done something slightly different here, and I'm like a little story, a little insight into something where you've gone, that's cool. I'm glad I built it that way.
Big yourself up, Tom. This is
Yeah, because in a minute I'm going to ask you for an epic fail.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Oh god.
You should
Yeah.
say you are there. You say you are. Just get you comfortable, and then tell you a really difficult question again. So
Yeah. So I think a recent. I mean, with CRM, often a lot of times people ask for something. Senior leadership will want to report on something. For example, lead source, or like actually, high levels of attribution across a journey, and the way that the report has been requested isn't necessarily supported by the data that is in place, or certainly there's been a new categorization of lead sources, or we've changed, etc. So, and often that will involve a historic backfill, or a historic recalibration of previous data to kind of to allow for kind of using going forward, and for analyzing based on the new kind of structure. And I touched on Claude earlier, and don't want to give away all my secrets, of course, but certainly Claude and HubSpot together are insanely, it's proving to be insanely powerful in terms of being able to, for example, generate a Python script. Claude, here's this data. For every contact that meets this criteria in HubSpot, based on this, based on anything to do with associations, dates, field properties, run a script, or create me a script that will update or recalibrate based on this spreadsheet. And then 5 seconds later, it's created it. You run it in your terminal, and it's just so. You can make it do dry runs first, obviously, to make sure that you're not about to screw everything up. But it's in most cases, it is so objective. It's not subjective. It's kind of, this is fact based on this requirement. Update my CRM like this. And I've been working on that with a couple of clients recently, when it comes to attribution in particular. And the kind of thing that used to take you days. I had a huge mop of thick hair before the last project that I did on that. Then it's now kind of 5 minutes to kind of validate it, run the script, and if it messes up, run a script to pull it back to what it was before. It's kind of with API history and things like that. So I think Claude is proving to be. I never got anywhere with ChatGPT in HubSpot. I found it unreliable. Okay. I found it certainly, it may well be getting better now, but I've that ship sailed for me now. I'm a Claude.
You've moved on.
I have. Sorry, OpenAI.
That's okay. Okay, and so now I'm going to put you on the spot again and ask you, what mistakes have you made that you think is worth sharing, so we can all learn from that? Maybe a recent mistake or something. Oh, perhaps you haven't made any recently. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly when it comes to mistakes in RevOps, as I mentioned earlier, there's often no place to hide because emails get triggered, notifications get triggered. Gosh, I think certainly 2 or 3 years ago there was a no, honestly, no, longer than that actually. I think maybe 2020, 2021. Very, very simple, but it was kind of like an email out to as part of a workflow post webinar. If customer, attendees, if customer, send this email. If not customer, send that email. And obviously immediately all of the customers are getting invites to sign up for the product and get super high discounts, which they wouldn't normally be aware of as customers, and all of the customers received stuff totally non-lead gen, much more content based, and it was, I think it was like the kind of COVID, maybe kind of beginning of COVID, like a lot of people were coming on, join this webinar to discuss what was going to be happening in the industry I was working with when it came to the impact of COVID. So it was probably one of the most heavily attended webinars that we've done. And yeah, one incorrect Boolean in the workflow, and you've got total wrong messaging going out to everyone.
Can definitely relate to that. I
We've
think
all
we
been
thought
there.
a new renewals flow, and basically everybody got a renewal email on the same day. And you're like, that's not
Well,
helpful.
when you
Yeah.
like this sort of the operational world I'm in now as well, like it is easy to do, we're all human beings, little things that you miss, and it's like 100 people have got an email they're not supposed to get, or whatever. It
Yeah.
happens.
Is that it's the moment when you realise and your stomach
I get
just sinks,
emails.
and
Yeah, what's this
it's like,
about?
yeah,
You're like,
yeah.
oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, or like, or if you get a message just from, or you're blissfully unaware it's happening because if you muted a channel and then you get a message saying, "Hey, what's?" And it's like, oh, don't know, oh god, what have I done? So, but yeah, that's
Oh,
just the world
yeah. You used to
we
say
live in.
sorry on mess. Yeah, but
Mm.
But yeah, well, thank you very much, Tom. And that was really good to understand more about your experience and some really sort of detailed explanations, I think, about how you can architect projects and make sure you've got the right variables or customer attributes and the things to kind of bear in mind around setting up HubSpot and things people need to take into account as well, I think. So yeah, it's really interesting to have you on. I think it was sort of a different angle from some of our other podcast interviews in terms of your experience. So having that kind of a consultant for a CRM to come and discuss things with us, I think is going to be really useful for our listeners. So I appreciate that. Thank you for a wonderful interview as always, Deborah, and lovely seeing you again. And just want to say thanks, and I guess have a great weekend. It is the weekend tomorrow, and it is Easter, so enjoy yourself, and we'll be in touch soon, Tom. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for
Thanks
having
a
me
lot.
on. Appreciate it. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Customer Success from the Ground Up podcast with me, Mike Marshall.
And me, Deborah Knight. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to like and follow, and we'll see you on the next one.